But we look to the west, where Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest will turn cloudier with some outbreaks of rain by dawn. Those outbreaks of rain move across the country. The cloud thickens across all parts after a bright start in the east, and it turns milder with these winds freshening from the southwest. So 11 to 14 Celsius generally first thing Thursday afternoon, and 5 to 6 Celsius for the northeast of Scotland, where here it's a bright afternoon until the rain pushes in by the end of the day. And that wet weather sweeps across Scotland and Northern Ireland during the afternoon, but it moves into England and Wales during the overnight period. Clears the southeast by dawn on Friday, so for many places it's wet overnight, and then it's drier again by dawn on Friday. Clear spells for the southern half of the UK, but very windy further north, with gales for western Scotland, especially for the northwest, where 60 to 70 mile-per-hour wind gusts are a possibility early on Friday. The winds do ease through the day. Showers at first eventually start to ease as well, but only a brief gap once again between weather systems on Friday, because more unsettled weather returns for the weekend, mostly in the form of showers.
We are GB News right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs and Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking. And I'll tell you what got you talking on Monday. Did you watch my show? Do you remember me asking you, new year, new start, what would be your 5 priorities for this country if you were Rishi Sunak? Well, I reckon someone was watching, because Rishi Sunak's been out today sharing his 5-point plan with the nation. Did you see it? It had a lot of stuff in there about cutting NHS waiting lists, halving inflation, reducing the national debt, and of course, stopping the birds. But what did you think to it? Does it sound about right? Was he missing anything? And do you reckon he can achieve any of it at all? And another thing that caught my eye that he's been talking about a lot is that he thinks we all need to be better at maths. How is he going to achieve that? Well, basically making it mandatory to study maths up to the age of 18. I chuckle a little bit because, it was hard enough to get me to study maths up until the age of about 16, never mind anything else. What about you? Are you in the camp that actually it should be essential and it's overdue, or do you think it's a little bit ludicrous? I want your thoughts on that. And we voted, didn't we, the Brexit referendum years and years and years ago now, but there is an almighty row brewing, so it seems, about what to do with the laws that remain from the time of us in EU. What should we do with them? Should they just be this mass bonfire with a deadline of the end of this year, or is that a little bit too rushed? What do you think to that? And an MP has been talking to us here at GB News, and she says that she wears a stab vest when she goes to meet her constituents. What do you think to that? Is it just a sign of the times, or is it a sign of a country that's got something vastly wrong? I want your thoughts on all of that, but before we get into it, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister has outlined 5 key promises setting out his government's priorities. Speaking in East London, Rishi Sunak issued a series of pledges, including promising to halve inflation to tackle the rising cost of living, growing the economy by pledging to create more opportunities across the country, reducing the national debts, which he says will secure the future of public services, cutting NHS waiting lists to ensure people can get care quicker, and stopping the small boats, ensuring people are detained and swiftly removed from the country. Well, while the Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner responded saying he's too weak to stand up to his party or vested interests, the Prime Minister said his government had already made steps towards improving the country.
Since I became Prime Minister, we've made progress, stabilised the economy and people's mortgage rates, provided £26 billion of support for the cost of living, invested billions more in schools, the NHS and social care, deepened ties with allies around the world on everything from Ukraine to our collective economic security, continued our unwavering support for the armed forces in their efforts to keep us safe, and set out a concrete plan to stop the boats and tackle the unfairness of illegal migration. But of course, we need to do more.
The Royal College of Nursing has responded to the Prime Minister's comments about the pressures facing the NHS, saying they're detached from reality. The RCN say the pressures being faced are far more ordinary than winter pressures. It comes after the Health Secretary blamed a surge of flu cases, COVID and Strep A concerns for pressures the NHS faced over Christmas. Now, the Prime Minister also touched on the ongoing rail strikes, saying his government's door is always open for dialogue with unions. It comes on the second day of the first of 2 48-hour strikes by rail workers, with over 40,000 RMT members walking off the job over pay, jobs and conditions. Train drivers in the ASLEF union will strike tomorrow, followed by a second 48-hour RMT strike on Friday. While RMT boss Mick Lynch told GB News the union wants a sensible agreement that everyone can support.
The message is that we do apologise for the inconvenience and we are working towards getting a solution. But there are a lot of people that are frustrated. We've got the health workers, education workers, firefighters are all getting the same treatment from the government, that they seem to want to extend the agony and not give people a square deal. And all we want is a square deal for our members, and then we can create a settlement.
Well, concerns have been raised over a lack of basic cold and flu medications at Britain's pharmacies. The Association of Independent Multiple Pharmacies is warning its members are running out of products such as throat lozenges and cough mixtures. They say the problems arise from a lack of planning by officials at the Department of Health. Supermarket Sainsbury's has announced it's to increase wages for nearly 120,000 workers from next month. Workers of both Sainsbury's and Argos will see increases from £10.25 to £11 outside of London. Staff wages inside the capital will increase to nearly £12. The group said the measures were to help retain existing and attract new employees in a tight labour market. Food inflation hit a record 13.3% last month due to soaring prices. That's up from 12.4% in the previous month. It comes as the latest price index showed the overall shop price inflation eased slightly to 7.3% in December. The British Retail Consortium says it was a challenging Christmas for many households across the UK. Author Faye Weldon, best known for her novel The Life and Love of a She-Devil, has died at the age of 91. She published more than 30 novels during her career, as well as short stories and plays written for TV, radio and the stage. She was also one of the writers on the popular 1970s drama series Upstairs, Downstairs. In a statement, her family say she died peacefully in her sleep this morning. And Edinburgh Zoo says the UK's only giant pandas will both be going back to China this year. It's nearing the end of an agreement with Chinese officials for Shan Shan, a female, and Yang Huan, a male, who've been at the zoo for 12 years. They're having special farewell events until their exact leave date is confirmed. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dewbs and Co.
Thanks for that. Well, I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, I've got the political commentator, Joe Phillips, and the former Brexit Party MEP and now CEO of First Property Group, Ben Habib. Good evening. Welcome, both of you.
Good
Happy
evening.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
First time I've seen you this year. You know the drill as well, don't you? It's not just about us three here in the studio. It's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Did you see Rishi's 5-point plan? What do you make to it? I don't think it's as good as the ones, some of the ones that you guys were sending in to me on Monday, by the way, but let me know your thoughts about it and, crucially, whether or not you think he can actually achieve any of it. Maths until you're 18 as well. What do you think to that? Makes me chuckle because I just don't think anyone would have been able to make me do that, quite frankly, irrespective of whether or not it would be a good idea or not. MPs wearing stab vests as well. What do you think to that? Is it a sign of the times, something that should concern us or not? And Brexit. It was years and years and years ago now, wasn't it? We all voted for it, or lots of us did anyway. But where are we when it comes to kind of the laws? Many people voted, didn't we, to take back control. How are we getting on with that? We'll be looking at that and more in, 45 minutes, 50 minutes almost now, till 7 o'clock. So keep me company, give me your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address. Let me just take a little look, by the way. Lots of you have been getting in touch with my new little tool. D says the following: Michelle, you keep asking, how can you make kids learn maths if they don't want to? It's called discipline. Alex says, is Rishi basically saying that a better grasp of maths will lead to people budgeting better? Diana says, I would prefer to see the school day extended by an hour per day. Then this could be an hour extra of maths. Goodness gracious. Diana, if someone said to me you've got an extra hour at the end of the day to do maths, I'd be out that back door quicker than I don't know what. But tell me, maybe I'm just being like one of those kids that you wouldn't want to have in your class. But lots of you are getting in touch as well. Elaine says, Michelle, it's maths, not maths. How could your son ever learn anything from you? Elaine, my friend, that's just an accent, isn't it? I hope my son will learn lots from me, and if he does it in a Hull accent, I'll be absolutely fine with it. Keep your thoughts coming in tonight. But let's get into that 5-point plan, shall we? Lots of you guys, by the way, were sending your 5-point plans to me on Monday. We came up with lots of them, didn't we? But Rishi's, let's focus on that for tonight. Cutting NHS waiting lists, halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing the national debt, and I know this one's quite important to some of you, stopping the migrant boats that are crossing the English Channel. Interesting list, Ben Habib, but what do you think to that?
Well, prima facie, they're all admirable aims, but the problem I think Rishi Sunak's got is that there was no substance behind any of the declarations he made. There were aspirations. Taking them one at a time. Halving inflation, well, that's a low bar. That should happen automatically. And even if inflation halves, it's still remarkably high and much higher than the 2% target that's set for the Bank of England, which is where we need to get back to. So that's not much of a target. Then he talked about cutting debt. What I think he means by cutting national debt is that as a proportion of GDP, it's going to drop. No Prime Minister in history has ever actually numerically reduced debt. So that's the same as his other point, that the economy has to grow. That was 2 points in one.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to achieve that. We are forecast to have one of the most protracted and deepest recessions because his agenda, effectively, and Jeremy Hunt's agenda, is one of anti-growth. It's one of control, more of the same that we've had in the past, high taxes, and we've got relatively high borrowing costs. So I don't think we're going to grow our way out of this problem. He talked about reducing waiting lists, but I just simply cannot believe that where the NHS is now, you know, he's going to get waiting lists coming down. Again, they're forecast to go up markedly from where they are at the moment. It's about 7.5 million people waiting 14 weeks for treatment. There were just over 4 million before the pandemic kicked off, before lockdown started, I should say. And I see that rising as the year goes on. And then he was challenged on stopping the boats. And, of course, his answer to stopping the boats this year was actually what I mean by that is passing the legislation required in order to stop the boats. Well, we've had legislation already a number of times to try and stop these boats. We had most recently the Nationality and Borders Bill that became the Act, and that was going to do all sorts of things to control our borders. So I think Rishi will succeed on his inflation target. I think he's going to spectacularly fail on everything else if 2023 is the yardstick, if 2023 is the period, you know, during which he has to succeed. And I think he will still have failed at the time of the next election.
Yeah, and I've got to say, one of the Rishi's key themes in all of this was that it was all about accountability. So he reckons he's come up with some quite tangible outcomes that you can judge him on when the next election comes. Do you think he'll achieve any of them?
No. And I think this whole essence of accountability, it's written into the speech, but there was no recognition that this party has been in government for 12 years. There was no recognition of the real worries that people are facing. You can write it down, Michelle. We could all do that and you know, repeat the words. But he clearly hasn't got, you know, and I'm not talking about charisma, but he's got no empathy. You know, does he actually understand what it's like for somebody who's waiting either for an operation that's been cancelled many times or someone who knows that a loved one has died because an ambulance didn't get there in time? Does he have any idea of the real pressures that families are under? And it sounded to me...
Do you think he doesn't?
I don't think he does. And if he does... then he certainly doesn't express them. I mean, Ben and I were talking before we came into the studio, and actually we both agreed that when he was answering the questions, he seemed more human, but the speech was managerial. It was like one of those things that we've all been to, and you sit in the room and you think, oh, Lord, and there's going to be a PowerPoint presentation about KPIs, and I really can feel that my eyes are glazing over. We are in a crisis. He's been absent, as have his ministers, right through Christmas and New Year. There was no sense of urgency. There was no sense of recognition. There was no sense of, you know, if you're going to judge him on how is he going to stop waiting lists?
Yeah, he had to be much more tangible. And I think I was listening to Liam Halligan before I came on, and, you know, this is a time of multiple crises. And I don't like the word crises much because it gives undue importance often to things that don't deserve that term, but I think we have got a number of crises going on, and this is a time for genuine leadership. It's a time for a leader to get out up in front and address head-on how he's going to solve the strikes, address head-on specifically how he's going to get waiting lists down, specifically how he's going to grow the economy. All economists agree that basically Jeremy Hunt's package of policies is anti-growth. And you talked earlier on, Michelle, about all the regulations that we still have from the EU. Well, one of the benefits of Brexit was to be jettisoning bureaucracy that we don't need, that the British national interest is not served by. And we haven't done any of that, and Rishi is pushing that to a back burner. So if you talk about legislative change that's going to boost the United Kingdom, we're not going to get that either. Deregulation, by the way, is a phenomenal way to power an economy, but he's not doing it.
Well, we'll come on to the whole bonfire of Brexit regulations, whatever we want to call it, but I'm fascinated about your point on Rishi, and I think that these Tories can't really win because They did have Boris Johnson, who was this bombastic kind of character that connected with the audience. You're saying, oh, I watched Rishi and my eyes glaze over thinking I'm going to get PowerPoint slides. The flip side of that is they had a charismatic leader, they had a dynamic communicator, and people couldn't wait to get rid of him.
But they couldn't...
Well, yeah, but Boris couldn't deliver.
They couldn't wait to get rid of him, not because of his charisma. They couldn't wait to get rid of him because he was an electoral liability, because he was a liar. And he, as Ben rightly says, he couldn't deliver. He was all about the bombast and the oratory and the performance, and he'd got no attention to detail, and he hadn't got the people.
So then you want a blend of the two, then I'm guessing, the style, the substance. So
but there's no substance with Rishi. That's, I think, what we've got to get clear. He's very keen to portray himself.
He's only been Prime Minister for about 5 minutes.
He's been Chancellor for much longer. We know Rishi. We know what Rishi believes in. He doesn't believe in growth. We also know that he flip-flops. You know, he made a number of pledges when he was running against Liz Truss, whether or not you buy into them, and he's reversed very largely all of them, including a bonfire of EU regulations, which he said he would ditch within his first 100 days as Premier. I mean, he's rode back from that.
I don't think it's just about personalities, because, you know...
But you made it about personality.
No, but it's not necessarily about personality. It's about how you come across, which isn't the same thing. You can get a good speechwriter. You need to, if you write speeches, which I have done for many, many people of different political complexions, you need to have an authentic voice. That stuff that he was reading out today didn't sound like somebody who is authentic. It sounded like somebody who was at the beginning of an electoral or election campaign, not someone who's been Chancellor, who's been an MP for quite a long time, who fought the leadership campaign and actually was more animated. You know, you've got... Who's he talking to? The first thing you've got to understand is, who are you talking to? Well, you're talking to the media primarily, and through the media to the public. And if you haven't got anything that people can grab onto, they're just going to go...
But I couldn't care less what someone's voice tone is.
I couldn't care less. I campaigned for Liz Truss, who is, you know, arguably one of the worst speakers that, you know, has graced...
But she had passion.
The front bench. But she had passion.
And she
knew what she believed in.
I mean, personally, I think she was a raving bonkers.
Well, whether you agree with her or not.
She had something that was not memorable. There's nothing... If you want to give a message of hope and optimism, you have to let people, metaphorically, go to bed tonight thinking, oh, I feel better. He's come back from Christmas. I feel as though someone's in charge. I don't think he's delivered that.
There was no leadership today.
Right,
no leadership.
So you're both not convinced by what you see. You're both not convinced about Sunak's ability to deliver. So what now, then?
Well, now we continue down the path for 1 3/4 years towards an electoral obliteration of the Tory party.
It's quite possible.
That's what's going to happen.
You know,
and we muddle on in recession.
The Conservatives have given up. But unless they recognise, and, you know, many, many MPs have said they're not standing again for a variety of reasons, and it is quite likely that they won't win the next election. It's a question of how much they lose by. But, you know, this isn't just about elections, and it shouldn't be, although I know politics always is. It should be about really addressing, as Ben says, head on. There is a crisis in so many aspects of our lives, but the biggest one is the health service. And, you know, he could have gone up there today and said, right, I know what the problem is. The biggest, quickest way of dealing with this is to implement the report that was done by Sir Andrew Dilnot 21 years ago, the Dilnot Commission. Successive governments have failed to deal with social care. And that is one of the biggest problems. If you can get people out of hospital who don't need to be in hospital, you're halfway.
He did touch on that. He did say that there are 13,000 beds that are being blocked by people who should really be in social care.
What is he going to do about it?
Yeah, but what's he going to do about it? How's he going to address it?
In the meantime, we hear on the news...
Why have I got 7,000 beds in my head?
13,000 is what I remember.
I said about 7,000. No. Oh, yeah, he's going to increase bed capacity by 7,000 more hospital beds and more people cared for at home.
But by how's he going to do it? Because if you've got Sainsbury's, as we've just heard, who are increasing their rates of pay, and carers are being paid minimum wage, by and large, and working long hours, doing unpleasant work in many, many circumstances, Well, why wouldn't you go?
Well, pay is an issue. I've told this story before. My mum and sister are nurses in the NHS. My mum's an auxiliary nurse, and she went to a pub the other day with her friends who were auxiliary nurses as well. And there was an advertisement for cleaners in the pub, and that was more. They were paying more than my mum was earning as an auxiliary nurse. And then you sit there, don't you, and you think...
And they may get that outside the tax net as well, which makes it very attractive.
So, it's all very well saying, and you see the government's answer, and it's not just Rishi Sunak, it's previous administrations as well. Their answer is, but we've ploughed this much money into it. Well, they haven't. The money that they've earmarked for National Health Service has not come through. Only about half of it's come through. The rest of it's coming through at the end of the month. They just keep saying, but we've given this money. And it's sort of like, but you're not dealing with the problem.
Yeah, I've got to say, one of the things that I thought was very odd, you've got your 5 priorities, and we are at crises in various different aspects of society now. And the sentiment is, we're going to come up with a plan in the coming months. Well, you haven't got the coming months.
No, we need a plan right now.
Yeah, you need
Absolutely.
a plan right now. Yeah. And I talk about this all the time on my programme. I should be in government, I should advising Rishi, reopen the Nightingale.
Be careful what you wish for.
Well, yeah, can you imagine?
There was a suggestion that he would reopen them, I think.
Reopen them for these bed blockers, and I hate to use that term because I know it's a little bit, not nice, but reopen those Nightingale hospitals, move some of the bed blockers into them, get it staffed either by volunteers or by, the armed forces.
That would be sensible. Why did they take them down? They knew. We had a problem before COVID. It was beginning to build up again. Waiting lists were beginning to build up. There was pressure on the health service. Then COVID came. But why take those Nightingale hospitals down?
Yeah, well...
Because you could have used them. And at the same time, technology is advancing in many, many things like CT scans, MRI, and all those sort of aspects of the assets of the health service. So why on earth dismantle them? Because you could have used them for extra outpatient thing, but you've got to have the staff.
It's so odd. And where are the journalists? Why isn't anyone asking these questions? This whole, BERT thing, we're going to sort out these BERTs. Well, when? Like, what point? When you just had it ruled by a court, actually, that your Rwanda plan is legal. So how come you've not sent your first plane there? What is it you're actually waiting for,
also,
you guys?
Michelle, the other thing is that in order to sort it out, you've got to deal with the backlog of asylum cases, because you can't send somebody away until you know that they are illegal. And
I thought you were sending them there for processing. So you'd be doing your processing and you're ascertaining whether or not they're legal or whatever the situation is in Rwanda.
Once they're in
I thought that was the whole point.
Yeah.
So to me, if you're sitting here waiting to do all your processing before you fill a plane, isn't that just defeating
the problem with that legal ruling
for over a year whilst they're being processed?
Just very quick. So the problem with that legal ruling is that in principle the Rwanda plan is fine, but actually human rights is an individual. It applies individually, so every individual has a right to have their case heard, and that's why the Rwandan plan is going to be a really difficult one to get across the line.
You could dispatch a plane to Rwanda, and then you could process whatever it is that you need to process there. If you've got human rights,
but they're all going to challenge them here. They're going to challenge them in the courts.
Well, you won't be able to challenge something if you've already been sent on a plane and the plane's dispatched. Anyway, I don't know. Am I just oversimplifying things? I don't know. You tell me.
Well, the way to do it is stop them in the Channel. Don't let them enter British territorial water. That is border control.
Well, I can tell you now, I do need to go to a break, but I've been keeping a half eye on my inbox, I have, and lots of people are saying Ben Habib for Prime Minister. So we need to get you to be the Prime Minister. You can sort out the goings-on in the Channel. Would you trust Ben Habib, by the way, to fix what's going on in the Channel? I don't know, Max, there's a 5-point plan from a man who asked an unemployed guy what he did for a living while serving him food. I wouldn't trust Rishi Sunak to deliver a newspaper. Cool, blimey, you're a bit harsh. Rooster says Rishi's vision and any MP's vision for the UK will never happen until it matches the union's visions. The unions seek their own members' wealth, not the public. Stuart says, well, if Rishi does achieve all this stuff, he would vote for him. Peter, I don't trust the Tories to stop the small votes, and I don't trust the Labour Party either, basically. And Paul says none of the above will happen. Halving inflation to cut the cost of living crisis will just see prices rocketing up. I'll leave you to think that through. I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I want to talk to you about maths. So put your thinking caps on, everybody, because apparently we're all not as good at maths as we should be. So let me ask you this. Are you paying attention? If you flip a coin twice, what's the probability that you'll get 2 heads? Did you get that? If you flip a coin twice, what's the probability that you'll get 2 heads? That was the question asked to MPs quite a few years ago now, and loads of them got it wrong. Do you know the answer? Tell me, and I'll see you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Joe Phillips and Ben Habib, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Maths, how good are you at maths? I must confess, I don't think it's my strongest attribute, my ability to do advanced mathematics, but even basic maths seems to stump many people. I asked you a question before the break, if you were paying attention. If you flip a coin twice, what is the probability that you'll get 2 heads? Paul has emailed in, Michelle, there's not 2 heads on a coin. I know this, Paul, my friend, I get this. So I'm asking you, this is the conundrum. What is the probability that if you flip the coin twice, that you'll get 2 heads? One of my panel has had to ask me for the answer. I'm not going to give them it. But do you know it at home? Do you know the answer?
I think I know the answer.
Do you know the answer?
No, I'll have a guess, though.
Well, loads of MPs didn't know the answer either. I have to say, I got some smart cookies in the audience, smarter than 2 people alongside me, because you say that you've got the answer. Write it down.
It could be a trick question.
What I'm going to do, it's not a question, right? It's not a trick question. Who's got a pen? Write it down on your paper, and I'm going to come back to you, Burr.
OK.
Right, but are you watching at home? I've got these guys to scribble down their answers.
No cheating.
Do it as a percentage.
Oh,
do it as a percentage, you two. Hang on, God, I'm going to be here all day. In fact, I can tell you what, it's a really good job that I am not a teacher, because I don't have enough patience, quite frankly. I really, really don't. I'm going to get some of your responses on that, and I'll give the answer at some point. But I got these 2 to write it down just so I can make sure there's no cheating. When I used to do my exams... I used to write stuff. I used to write answers like this when I used to do my GCSEs all up my arm. And then when I used to sit down and do my exams, inch by inch, I used to reveal answers.
Now you tell us.
Not so good for maths, though. Maths, you can't do that with maths. You've got to know your way.
Well, yes, it's very true. And anyway, it didn't bode well, by the way, because my results were absolutely appalling, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Anyway, point is, let's cut to the chase. Rishi Sunak, he wants everyone to be better at maths. He reckons that essentially you should have compulsory maths until the age of 18. Joe Phillips, good idea or not?
I think it's a good idea that we are more numerate, and I think, actually, this conversation indicates part of the problem, that we are all quite casual and laissez-faire about saying, oh, I'm hopeless at maths. We wouldn't say the same about literacy, but we seem to sort of accept the fact that it's OK to not be good at numeracy. So I think there is probably a problem. The nonsense of his idea is, A, there's a huge shortage of maths teachers, and B, it needs to start at primary school. It's no point in doing it at 16, as you said, Michelle. If you've struggled with maths all the way through from the age of 5 until 16, it's not going to suddenly magically become clear at 16. There are other ways of doing things, and I think, is it something that we need? Yes, we do need to be more numerate, but it's not necessarily what employers want. I mean, what they keep saying they want from young people like the CBI and the IOD, is that they want young people to have the confidence and communication skills and to deal with those sort of things, rather than to be able to, do a logarithm or an angle.
Well, you're an employer, Ben. Apparently a lot of this is because it will make younger people more attracted to employers if they've got better maths grades, etc. Is that true?
So when I look at employing someone, it's pretty important to me that they have an A in GCSE maths.
Really?
Yeah, it is, because GCSE takes you as far as you need to go, frankly, for business. Business is not complex maths. If you're a quant at Goldman Sachs doing algorithmic analysis for your next trading strategy, that might, that might be more complex. But the basic day-to-day business of profit and loss statements, balance sheets, how you make money, that's all add, subtraction, multiplication, division. And actually, the use of spreadsheets. What I find mostly out of graduates is they can come out with a maths degree and they don't know how to use a spreadsheet. And spreadsheets are really important for business. So if I were to do anything, I'd do more spreadsheet work. But actually, the fundamental basis in terms of business, for business, you've got all you need at GCSE level.
Would you give me a job?
I don't know what your maths is like.
Is that so? You would judge whether or not you'd hire me based on whether or not I've got an A GCSE in maths?
Well, if you had an A, I would see that. Yeah, it's an employer's market. I'm in a business that requires a knowledge of mathematics. Mathematics is one component of thinking logically, and thinking logically is very important in business.
Well,
sorry, I hope I haven't put the whole panel offside.
I am heartbroken because I've just missed out on a career opportunity with you based purely on my lack of maths GCSE.
Well, I might,
You'd exclude me because I haven't got an A
You
in
wouldn't be
maths.
applying for my company for a job.
Well, you never know. You never know.
With television.
But I find this fascinating, this whole kind of blanket employer's approach to qualifications, because I honestly, I couldn't care less. I've hired lots of people. I couldn't care less what qualifications people have got. I'm not interested.
No, but I'm in a business that requires numeracy. We're analysing companies all the time. We're analysing properties. We're figuring out how you make money, what your cash flow returns are going to be. So you have to have a basic feeling for mathematics.
Basic. But I don't think GCSE at an A level is basic. I think that's quite advanced.
Okay.
I didn't get a GCSE in maths, by the way, obviously, I must declare that. But to me, saying that you want an A in GCSE, I think that's quite harsh. You'd exclude people like me. I'm going to go home feeling like a loser.
No, you're not a loser. You could be in our PR department.
Oh, can I? Oh, well, there you go. There's hope for me.
It's just the job that you need to apply for.
There is hope for me, yeah. I was asking you, by the way, the question earlier on about if I flipped a coin twice, what would be the probability of getting two heads in a row, basically? Let's have a look at some of your answers. Let me see if I can bring some of these up on the screen. Malcolm. I don't know what you're thinking tonight, but Malcolm says 64%.
Ooh, that's very specific.
Yeah, that is quite niche. John says basically a half. Evan says 33.33 reoccurring, or 1/3. What did you say?
I said 50%.
Joe Phillips. What did you say?
Well, I said 25%.
You said 25%. Pete says the following. 1 flip would be 50%, 2 flips would be 25%. Pete says, you're welcome, Pete. You are spot on, my friend. Ben Habib gets it right. Joe Phillips gets it wrong.
I wouldn't get a job with Ben either.
Yeah, so that's it. Basically, we're all in the thicker corner. We're not employable. We're unemployable by Ben Habib. I'm gonna go and practice some mathematics. Did you get that right? There was some fascinating answers, by the way. Vernon said it was a stupid question. Vernon, that's what people say when they don't know the answer. That's all I can say to you. Unfortunately for me, though, I think I've got to get back to maths class as well. But I always say, you know what, if you know how to Google stuff, if you know how to, like, I don't know, anything you struggle with, just hire an accountant if you want to get into business and be better at maths.
There are other things that I think are more important to teach kids at school, actually.
Very quickly, tell me, like, what, because I'm going to a break.
Cooking.
Cooking?
Cooking.
Is that more important, learning to cook, than learning to do maths in the great outdoors of the world? I don't know. You tell me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email. I can't cook either, by the way. I'm laughing because I just think there's no hope for me. There's no hope for me.
You're a great presenter, great politician.
Yeah, I can't do maths. I can't go with Ben. I can't cook, so I can't go with Joe. I'll just stay with you lot at home. How about that, eh? I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk Brexit, shall we? Brexit, of course, is still in the headlines. Lots of rows brewing. Apparently, by the way, many of us want another referendum and we'd vote to stay. Is that you? But specifically when it comes to the laws, how quick should we get rid of remaining EU laws? The end of the year, is that a realistic target? Or does it need to be much longer? Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs and Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Camilla Tominey. Join me on GB News on Sunday mornings for a politics show with personality on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Maths with Dewbs, right through until 7 o'clock tonight. I'm only kidding. This is Dewbs and Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. We're laughing because we've just been setting maths quizzes before the break. I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Political commentator Joe Phillips and the former Brexit Party MEP, now CEO of First Property Group, Ben Habib, who's basically told me he won't give me a job for the money. These two guys keep me company till 7 o'clock tonight. We've just been talking about maths and Joe was saying, actually, one of the skills that you should be focusing on, perhaps even more importantly than maths, is things like cooking. And that's got a big response in my inbox, actually. A lot of people saying, absolutely, we should be teaching people to cook. But other people are pointing out, but you need maths as well to cook, or else how do you do your measurements?
Yes, but you see, that's how you learn things. You learn a lot of maths by doing practical things. Whether it's cooking, you're weighing things out, you're working out ratios of ingredients and things, and you don't realise that you're learning maths. And that, to me, is how you learn life skills. You know, I can't sew, but if you were doing sewing...
You can't sew?
No, I'm absolutely hopeless. When I started at secondary school and we had sewing lessons, in the end, the teacher gave up with me because we were making these awful grey flannel gym skirts, and mine was sweaty and crumpled and disgusting, and I really struggled with it, and I sewed it to my skirt, and in the end she took it away from me and she made me do calligraphy instead.
Oh, the image of Jo having a sweaty, scrunched up skirt.
But I have to tell you,
I've
I've
got
lovely handwriting, but
have
couldn't
you?
sew a button on.
Lovely handwriting. I can sew. I'll teach you how to sew in the
you?
break. I can sew. My mum taught me that skill, thank you very much. I can sew your buttons back on. If it all goes wrong, I could set up a seamstress business, couldn't I?
Yeah, should we work at it?
Oh, yeah, but yeah, he won't give me any work.
Exactly.
In case you've just tuned in, you're wondering what we're talking about, Ben Habib wouldn't employ anyone unless you've got an A in maths. Do you know how
GCSE.
GCSE. Do you know how I got my first job? And I do not advocate this for anyone that is watching. They said they would only consider applicants with an A to C GCSE in maths and English. So do you know what I did? I wrote on my CV that I had an A this and a B this, so that I could get an interview.
And then you were in.
Yeah, and then my ex-boyfriend threatened to ring the HR department and grass on me because I didn't have any of the sort.
Well, you did well to get...
Is that why he's your ex-boyfriend?
Yeah, something like that. I don't advocate, by the way. It caused me a lot of stress, so it did, thinking I was about to be rumbled because of my GCSE.
No, but it is a very fair point, though, that you've got to get through, you know, the screening thing. And I think for young people, part of the problem is you can't see the jobs people do. You know, you can see what a nurse does, you can see what a firefighter does, you can see...
And they're specifically trained for that purpose,
Exactly,
aren't
but,
they?
you know, you can't see anybody, or most people you see, they're looking at a computer screen. Now, they might be working in quantum physics, they might be working in banking, they could be an architect, they could be an animator, they could be anything. And I think it's quite hard for young people to come onto the jobs market without understanding what a job entails, you know, unless you think, oh, I want to work in a restaurant, or I want to work outdoors, or I want to be a mechanic. Well, it's just an office sitting in front of
better careers. I think you need better careers, advice and insight and guidance in schools. I think you could go... I think that would help a lot of young people, actually, because you can only be what you can see. If you don't know that something exists, how do you know you want to be it? I don't know. Right, let's talk about Brexit, shall we? Of course, to some people's frustration, we did indeed leave the European Union. But how much progress have we made? There are, of course, still thousands of EU laws on the books. What are we going to do with them? We keep talking about a bonfire of the Brexit regulations. This is all kind of going through Parliament at the moment, soon to be going to the Lords. We're putting a deadline at the moment on it for the end of this year.
2023, yeah.
Yeah, some people are saying that's too rushed. It should be more like 2026. Where do you stand?
So, first things first, taking a very logical approach to this.
Mathematical approach.
Yeah, mathematical approach. The United Kingdom hasn't left the European Union. Only part of the United Kingdom has left the EU. Northern Ireland has, to a very significant extent, been left behind. And we know that because we got judicial rulings which prove it. That means that the UK can't have a bonfire of legal regulations in the way that we might have been able to if we left the EU as one United Kingdom. The Northern Ireland will never get what we in Great Britain get. And the more we cut and diverge, cut laws and diverge from the EU and Great Britain, the bigger the chasm becomes between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. Yeah. And I think part of the problem that Rishi Sunak is facing, it's only part of the problem, because I don't think he really cares that much for Northern Ireland, is creating that chasm and therefore emphasising the Irish Sea border, the partition that the Conservative Party has created between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And then the other thing that is really important to remember, which again doesn't get enough airtime, is that in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement which we signed with the EU, we signed up to alignment on state aid, competition, employment and environmental laws, such as they were at the time of when we left the single market on 31st December 2020. even though I only enumerated 4 bits of legislation, they are really key parts of our legislative framework: state aid, competition, employment and environment. And so we can't really diverge in the way that we would wish to if we were putting British national interests first. We simply can't do it. As long as people understand that, I think they will appreciate the difficulty the government therefore has in cutting other legislation back. But there is other legislation they can cut back, for example, financial services, where we didn't have a deal with the EU and where Jeremy Hunt quite sensibly is ditching Solvency II, or says he's going to ditch Solvency II, and has launched these Edinburgh reforms, which is a review of a number of different EU-inspired financial services regulations. And it actually shines a brilliant light, Michelle, on how beneficial it would have been if we'd left without a deal, because financial services can now do what they want, and we, the rest of the country, can't. And so what I would say to people who say Brexit isn't working, we're not cutting enough laws, etc., is it's not Brexit. It's because we haven't Brexited. It's because the UK hasn't left the EU.
Not enough Brexit.
Well, it's not a matter of degrees. I think that's a trap. If you get into a debate about degrees of Brexit, you end up having to debate whether the kind of Brexit we got was right or not.
I'm not going to get into degrees. I don't have a GCSE in maths.
We haven't Brexited.
There. Jo, where do you stand?
Well, I think, I mean, it's interesting what Ben says. And what comes across is that actually had people been better informed at the beginning, they would have realised that some of the promises were very empty promises. So what you're saying, Ben, as I've just understood it, is that it's difficult for the government to dismantle these things that we'd already signed up to, those key pillars. The point that has been made by Daniel Finkelstein, a Conservative peer in the Times today, is really good. And his point is that, you know, people who voted for Brexit wanted to stop us having rules that were made without our say-so, that they were made undemocratically. That was the argument.
Yeah.
But we're now in a position where Jacob Rees-Mogg, when he was business secretary, wanted to just burn everything and get rid of everything by the end of this year. And as you say, they're going through up to the Lords, who are unelected. So we could end up with laws being dismantled or just changed or left as they are by an equally unelected body. And it seems to me that actually the sensible, pragmatic thing to do is to look at what we need to have in order for business to carry on, and then gradually change or alter the others.
Well, we're going to be looking in more detail at this, actually, because I need to take a break, but I want to also continue this conversation. I'm going to include you in it when I come back from the break. Where do you stand on Brexit? For example, there was a poll done recently that said the majority of people want another referendum because either they regret their first vote or they think life's moved on, or just for the heck of it, I don't know. Where do you stand on that? Give me your thoughts and we'll continue the Brexit chat in just a couple of minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News.
Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company whilst you have your tea right through till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me the political commentator Joe Phillips and the former Brexit Party MEP and now CEO of First Property Group, Ben Habib. Lots of you guys have been getting in contact. We were just talking about Brexit just before the break and the so-called bonfire of EU regulations. Greg says, Michelle, when did we leave the European Union? I don't actually remember us even leaving, and I think this is one of the conversations that we've just been having. Was it, you know, did we actually complete Brexit? Is it a done deal? Is it still hanging? What are we going to do next? Karen says anything to do with the EU needs to just be put on a bonfire. However, if the pandemic hadn't have happened, everything would have been dealt with much more swiftly. Also, as well, there was a poll conducted. Let me get the stats. 65% of Brits apparently would like another Brexit referendum. Really? Are you one of them? I'm certainly not. Jeff says, I voted to leave and I would again tomorrow. The problem isn't Brexit. It is the unwillingness of the politicians to live up to their promises to follow it through.
Yeah.
What do you make to all of this? The kind of polling, people asking, do you want another referendum? And
well, I mean, there's been a rearguard action against the vote to leave the EU from the minute we voted to leave the EU. They weaponised, first of all, the Irish border issue, tried to use that as a hook to keep the United Kingdom closely aligned to the EU, which to some extent seems to be working, you know, given the discussion we're having. And failing which, they would have taken Northern Ireland, and that's still up in the air, and we've got that constitutional battle still going on. And I think that's really the heart of the problem. It's a political establishment that doesn't have self-confidence, that actually doesn't believe in the United Kingdom, doesn't believe that we're able, as the fifth largest economy in the world, to chart an independent economic course for the betterment of our people within our country. They see, because of their lack of confidence, they see security in being part of a supranational institution. They prefer to abrogate the responsibilities given to them by the electorate, to the unelected bunch in Brussels. And they think that kind of collective working is better for the UK. You actually heard it in Rishi's speech today. He talked about cooperation. You know, I've achieved so much in the short weeks that I've been a Prime Minister. I've cooperating globally on economic issues. Well, you know, Rishi, you're not elected to cooperate globally on economic issues. You're elected to champion British economic interests. And I think that's a fundamental problem. And so if I were PM, I would ditch the deal with the EU, and I would, if necessary, get ready for a trade war, if that's what it results in. I would deregulate. By the way, if you get ready for a trade war, you don't get one, because they back out. But I would get ready for a trade war. I'd deregulate, I'd cut taxes, and I would take the fight to the EU.
Oh, I can hear people. I can hear you on your sofa. You're shouting through your chips. Ben Habib for Prime Minister. I can hear you at home, Joe.
I think the problem is that many people who voted for Brexit voted for a variety of perfectly understandable reasons. Not, you know, I'm a Remainer and remain so. And I think that, unfortunately, they were sold a pup. They were sold a lot of empty slogans. Do you remember the buses that promised the millions that were going to be poured into the NHS? And we've spent the first half of this programme and many others talking about the crisis in the NHS.
Yeah, but a lot of money has been poured into...
They've had that money, by the way. They've had that money.
But I think the problem is that nobody wants to feel as though they've been conned. You know, none of us would want to admit that we'd been scammed. And I think that a lot of people who voted for Brexit believed every word that Boris Johnson and the like of him said, and they now realise that they've been scammed. I mean, the figures on this are actually interesting, is that 56% of people think that leaving the EU hurt the economy. 12 months ago, that was 44%.
Yeah, but hang on. I mean, I'll
That's
just make the point.
a poll, yeah.
You've had a,
Yeah, it's
you've had a
April.
massive pandemic since then. You've closed down, ridiculously in my view, you've closed down your entire economy. And then when people go, oh, look, the economy's damaged, instead of fessing up to their ridiculous policies which created it in the first place, they point the finger at Brexiteers. Anyway, look at the time, everyone. It flies by, doesn't it, when you're having fun? Lots and lots of people. Elaine says definitely Ben Habib, 4 p.m. Stephen says, I've got no regrets whatsoever for voting leave, and I would do so again if there was another referendum. Oh, goodness me, let's hope that they wouldn't. A lot of you, by the way, are getting in touch about COVID restrictions potentially coming back. I might pick up on that for tomorrow. Lots of people are enjoying the conversations tonight and appreciating the panel. Joe says, another referendum, yes, please, but this time for a full Brexit. And Keith, you win the award for my best email in today. We've just been talking about maths or cooking. Keith says, Michelle, if you're really good at maths, you wouldn't need to learn how to cook because you could afford a chef to do your cooking for you. I like your style, Keith. Joe, Ben, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your company at home. Up next, Nigel Farage. Nigel, good evening. What have you got for us?
Out of his winter hibernation, must be the mild weather. And he makes these 5 big pledges. We'll discuss and debate all of them. We'll ask, can he deliver on them, or are they so vague that somehow he can simply wriggle out of them? And joining me on Talking Pints, former world boxing champion John Conte. So it'll be a busy hour, but before all that, let's get the weather.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Mild for most of us through the next 24 hours. One exception, northern Scotland overnight, but it then turns cloudier all across the UK into Thursday with outbreaks of rain in some spots. We've got a brief interlude between weather systems, one low moving away to the east, one low approaching from the west. And in between, some clear spells with winds easing as well. So clear spells for the Midlands, Eastern England, North East Scotland, and actually it's across North East Scotland with those clear spells and with lighter winds that we'll see a touch of frost first thing Thursday. Showers generally in the north easing overnight. They'll take some time, but eventually most places will be drier. But we look to the west where Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest will turn cloudier with some outbreaks of rain by dawn. Those outbreaks of rain move across the country. The cloud thickens across all parts after a bright start in the east. And it turns milder with these winds freshening from the southwest. So 11 to 14 Celsius generally first thing Thursday afternoon, and 5 to 6 Celsius